She alleged that Diddy raped her several times. She says she actually went through about, I would say, 2 or 3 different alleged.
Diddy knew those fingerprints were going to incriminate him via some associate and connect him to the arson and then the burglary.
And by the way, there was also testimony from an LAPD officer that the car, they had a photo and they saw the car that was, or an SUV that was parked in front of the house led back to, it was owned by Bad Boy. So again,
but that's at least hard evidence.
The world of Sean Diddy Combs, a name that screams music, media, and nonstop ambition, has been completely flipped upside down. What started as hushed rumors and lawsuits has exploded into a massive legal battle. Federal prosecutors are now knee-deep in a criminal trial that's got everyone talking. We're hearing about racketeering, sex trafficking, and a pattern of abuse that allegedly went on for decades, painting a really dark and disturbing picture of the hip-hop mogul. And just when you thought this whole thing couldn't get crazier, some recent bombshells in the courtroom are hinting that there's even more troubling stuff yet to come out. Look, this isn't just your average celebrity scandal. We're talking about a huge federal case here, with accusations that Diddy was running a criminal operation disguised as a music empire. The testimony? It's been graphic. The evidence? Startling. And the stakes? They couldn't be higher. Combs could actually spend the rest of his life behind bars. But the latest twist? Oh, it's a doozy. We've got accusations of evidence tampering at the very top, a desperate attempt to get a mistrial, and a judge laying down the law. All this while the unsettling stories of a firebombed Porsche and mysteriously destroyed fingerprint cards are hanging in the air. This is more than just a trial, it's a serious wake-up call that could change how we look at power, fame, and the nasty secrets allegedly hiding under all that success. So, to really get how big this whole thing is, we need to back up a bit. The ball really got rolling with Cassandra "Cassie" Ventura, Diddy's former longtime partner and an R&B singer herself. Back in November 2023, she dropped a bombshell lawsuit. It was under New York's Adult Survivors Act, a law that opened a temporary window for victims of sexual violence to file civil claims, even if the usual time limit had passed. Her lawsuit laid out a horrifying story: alleged rape, years of physical abuse, and being forced into drug-fueled sex acts with male escorts. And get this, she claimed Combs filmed these encounters and used the footage as blackmail. Now, Diddy denied all of it, and they settled the lawsuit within 24 hours for a reported $20 million. Cassie even confirmed that number on the stand in the criminal trial. But that settlement was like throwing gasoline on a fire. It just opened the floodgates. Suddenly, dozens of other civil lawsuits popped up, all painting a pretty consistent and disturbing picture of alleged sexual assault, harassment, and sex trafficking by Combs, with accusations going back decades and involving many different people. With so many serious civil claims piling up, you better believe federal authorities started paying attention. Then, in March 2024, things got really dramatic. Federal agents raided Diddy's fancy homes in Los Angeles and Miami, and it was all over the news. These raids were reportedly tied to a federal sex trafficking investigation. Sources were saying that investigators were talking to people from the civil lawsuits as part of their growing case. It was crystal clear this wasn't just about civil money anymore. A serious criminal investigation was officially on. And apparently, they walked away with dozens of electronic devices from those raids. By September 2024, the investigation led to Diddy's arrest and a federal indictment. He got hit with multiple charges, including sex trafficking by force, fraud or coercion, racketeering conspiracy, and taking people across state lines for prostitution. Prosecutors are saying Diddy ran a criminal group, which they've called the Combs Enterprise. They claim this group was involved in a pattern of illegal stuff for years, using his influence in businesses to carry out and cover up crimes. He's pleaded not guilty to everything and has been locked up in federal custody at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn since his arrest, with no luck getting bail.
Racketeering, forcible sex trafficking, and then interstate prostitution. And I think as bad and damning as the evidence is, it's going to be tough for prosecutors, I think, to get it to meet the definition of racketeering and forcible sex trafficking.
Jury selection for the big federal criminal trial kicked off on May 5th, 2025, and opening arguments started on May 12th in a Manhattan courtroom with U.S. District Judge Aaron Subramanian overseeing things. Right from the get-go, the prosecution painted Combs as the ringleader of a criminal enterprise that forced women into sex acts and used violence and intimidation to keep everyone in line. A huge part of the prosecution's case revolves around these freak-offs. They're described as these wild, drug-fueled, multi-day sex marathons, often with prostitutes, that Combs allegedly set up, directed, and sometimes filmed. Prosecutors say Combs pressured women into taking part in these events, and during those raids on his homes, authorities supposedly found what prosecutors are calling freak-off supplies, things like drugs and over 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant. 1,000! Cassie Ventura, who's a key witness for the prosecution, spent days on the stand giving emotional and often really graphic testimony. She talked about tons of alleged instances of severe physical abuse, saying Combs would smash me in my head, knock me over, drag me, kick me, stomp me. She described being forced to participate in these freak-off sex performances, which she said made her feel disgusting and horrible about myself. She testified that Combs would watch her have sex with male escorts and threatened to leak videos of it if she didn't go along with it. She also alleged Diddy raped her at her home after she tried to break up with him. And during her testimony, the jury was shown sexually explicit images from these alleged freak-offs, featuring Ventura and escorts. The public in the courtroom didn't see them, though. Remember that infamous 2016 hotel surveillance video? The one CNN released in May 2024, showing Combs violently attacking Ventura in a hotel hallway, kicking her, dragging her, and even throwing a vase at her? That was a major piece of evidence, too. Judge Subramanian said it was admissible, even though the defense objected, saying it wouldn't be unfair prejudice to Mr. Combs. Ventura testified about that incident, and jurors saw photos of her alleged injuries, including a swollen lip. She even said that a friend who saw her injuries was upset because they'd seen her with black eyes and busted lips before. Just awful. And there have been other witnesses. A former hotel security guard who dealt with that 2016 hotel incident testified he saw Ventura with a purple eye and claimed Diddy bribed him to keep quiet. A male escort, Daniel Phillip, testified he was paid to have sex with Ventura while Combs watched. He also claimed he saw Combs throw a bottle at Ventura and drag her by her hair. Now, the defense has admitted that Combs has been violent, but they're denying it counts as sex trafficking or any of the other charges. Their game plan seems to be to paint the sexual encounters as consensual, just part of a swinger lifestyle. They're also trying to make the accusers look bad, suggesting they're just after money or have shaky memories. Diddy's lawyer, Tenny Garagos, basically told the jurors they might think Combs is a jerk or mean, but argued that this case is about voluntary choices made by capable adults in consensual relationships. So, the trial was already packed with disturbing stuff, but it took an especially dramatic turn in its third week, all centering on an alleged incident with rapper Kid Cudi. Years ago, back in 2012, Kid Cudi's Porsche was firebombed. Prosecutors are hinting this was connected to Diddy, who supposedly went ballistic when he found out Cudi was dating Cassie Ventura. During the trial, Lance Jimenez, an arson investigator for the LA Fire Department, testified about the firebombing. He described how a Molotov cocktail, made from a 40-ounce malt liquor bottle and a designer handkerchief no less, was used. Then came the real shocker. Jimenez testified that fingerprint cards taken from Cudi's burned Porsche were destroyed in August 2012, about 8 months after the fire. He said someone in the LAPD, who wasn't even involved in the investigation, ordered those fingerprint cards to be destroyed. And he confirmed, yeah, that's definitely not standard procedure. This testimony immediately made Diddy's defense team jump up and ask for a mistrial. Defense attorney Alexandra Shapiro argued there was prosecutorial misconduct, claiming prosecutors were trying to subtly tell the jury that Combs had messed with the investigation and was behind the evidence disappearing. She argued this just feeds into what some jurors might already think, that Diddy can buy his way out of anything. She said, "There's no way to unring this bell." Another defense lawyer, Mark Agnafilo, called what the prosecution did outrageous. Judge Aaron Subramanian shot down the defense's request for a mistrial right away. But he did tell the jury to ignore the testimony about the fingerprint cards being destroyed. Now, that's a standard instruction in these situations, but you gotta wonder how effective it is. You know, It's hard for jurors to really unhear something they've already been told. This whole thing is a pretty big deal because it ties into the wider accusations of racketeering and obstruction of justice. The implication, whether the prosecution meant it or the jury just picked up on it, is that Diddy or his crew might have had the power and connections to make crucial evidence just vanish. And that fits right into the prosecution's story of Combs leading a criminal enterprise that used fear, violence, and manipulation to protect itself. But wait, there's another layer here. Earlier in the trial, when Kid Cudi himself was testifying, Diddy's lawyers had questioned him about female DNA supposedly found on a bottle recovered from his burned Porsche. The government initially tried to stop that line of questioning. More recently, prosecutors asked the judge to stop the defense from asking the arson investigator Jimenez about his own report, which confirmed female DNA was found by the LAPD. The judge said no to the government's objection. This means Jimenez might actually testify that the DNA was consistent with a female, not Combs. This could throw a wrench in the prosecution's theory about Diddy's direct involvement in the arson, or at least make it more complicated. It also makes you wonder even more why no charges were ever filed against Combs for that specific fire. So all this drama around the Kid Cudi arson, the destroyed fingerprints, and the DNA questions, it's a really critical moment in the trial. It shows just how aggressive both sides are being and shines a light on this complicated mess of alleged intimidation and potential obstruction that the prosecution is trying to prove is all part of a bigger criminal conspiracy. Beyond all the courtroom drama, the sheer number of accusations and the kind of evidence being shown have had a huge impact. Cassie Ventura's detailed an emotional 4 days on the stand, where she talked about years of alleged abuse, being forced into freak-offs, and even being urinated on. It's been particularly tough to hear. She spoke about being controlled, facing physical violence, and how Diddy allegedly gave her drugs, which she used to try and cope. She even admitted that the trauma got so bad, she thought about suicide at one point. And then there's the physical evidence, like the graphic photos of Ventura's alleged injuries that the jury saw, and that infamous 2016 hotel assault video. It all adds a very real, gut-wrenching layer to the words. The prosecution's version of Diddy's enterprise includes him using his legitimate businesses, music, clothes, alcohol, to supposedly fuel and hide all this criminal activity. The public reaction, it's been intense. Every new detail gets picked apart on social media and in the news. This trial isn't just about these specific charges, it's also about the whole culture of power, abuse, and silence that can fester in industries like entertainment. The fact that these allegations, some going back years, are only just now exploding into the open like this, has a lot of people asking how this kind of alleged behavior could go on for so long. The defense admitting Combs could be violent while trying to spin the sexual encounters as consensual, well, that's a risky move. It's like saying, okay, he was a bad guy, but not that bad, not a federal criminal. The prosecution's main challenge is to prove it wasn't just isolated incidents of violence or controversial sex stuff, but a pattern of force, fraud, and coercion that adds up to a criminal enterprise under federal law. Legal experts have pointed out that evidence of rape, assault, and arson, even though they aren't the main charges, are being used to build that pattern needed for the sex trafficking and RICO convictions. Before the trial even started, Diddy turned down a plea deal from federal prosecutors. We don't know the details of that deal, but him choosing to go to trial suggests that he, or at least his legal team, thinks they can actually beat these charges. Despite this mountain of accusations, this trial is nowhere near over, and new details are popping up all the time. So what do you guys think about these shocking turns and the evidence we've heard so far? Do you think the prosecution has built a strong enough case for racketeering and sex trafficking? Or does the defense's argument about consensual, even if problematic behavior actually make sense? Let us know your opinions in the comments below. And hey, if you're finding this breakdown useful, please hit that like button. It really helps us bring you more content like this. The trial is expected to go on for several more weeks, maybe even 8 to 10 weeks total from when it started. We're expecting more witnesses to testify, possibly including other alleged victims and former business buddies. The defense will keep up its cross-examinations, trying to find holes in the prosecution's story and chip away at the credibility of their witnesses. If he's convicted on all counts, Sean Combs is looking at a pretty grim future. That racketeering charge alone could mean life in prison, and a conviction for sex trafficking comes with a mandatory minimum sentence of 15 years. Since he's been denied bail and is still in federal lockup, the pressure is definitely on. No matter what the verdict ends up being, the Diddy trial has already made a huge splash. It's really ramped up the conversation about holding powerful people accountable, especially with everything that's come out of the Me Too movement and laws like New York's Adult Survivors Act, which is what allowed Cassie Ventura to file her initial lawsuit in the first place. It's definitely cast a dark shadow over Diddy's legacy, which he spent decades building as a hit-making producer, record executive, and entrepreneur. His own lawyer even got Cassie Ventura to admit on the stand that she understood his career was ruined after her lawsuit went public. This trial is also a pretty stark reminder of just how complicated it is to prosecute cases involving alleged long-term abuse, coercion, and criminal operations hiding behind legitimate businesses. The prosecution has to carefully connect all these individual alleged acts to a bigger pattern of racketeering and trafficking, and they have to prove intent and the use of force, fraud, or coercion beyond a reasonable doubt. That's a tall order. All this focus on freak-offs, the alleged filming of sex acts for control, and using drugs to make sure people complied, it paints a seriously disturbing picture. If it's proven, it would be a disgusting abuse of power. The outcome of this trial, people will be picking it apart for years. It's going to influence how similar cases are investigated and prosecuted, and how we all look at the crossover of fame, wealth, and alleged crime. The defense's argument that this is all just voluntary choices made by capable adults and a swinger lifestyle is a direct collision course with the prosecution's story of control, abuse, and a criminal enterprise. The jury's got the tough job of sifting through weeks of testimony and evidence, a lot of it contradictory and super emotional, to figure out what really happened. And this recent drama with the alleged evidence destruction and the mistrial request, it just cranks up the intensity and shows how high the stakes are in this legal fight. Every single piece of evidence, every witness, every legal move is being fought over tooth and nail. The Sean Diddy Combs trial has definitely become a defining moment, not just because he's a celebrity, but because of how serious the charges are and the absolutely shocking nature of the allegations that have come out. From Cassie Ventura's gut-wrenching testimony about years of alleged abuse and forced sexual encounters to the prosecution's claims of a criminal enterprise running for decades hidden by a music empire, the details are as disturbing as they are fascinating. And this latest shocking turn, the accusations about destroyed evidence in the Kid Cudi arson case, and the judge denying a mistrial, that's just added another wild chapter to an already unbelievable situation. It really makes you think about the lengths people or organizations might allegedly go to protect themselves, and the huge challenges prosecutors face when they're trying to unravel these complex webs of alleged criminal activity. As the trial goes on, the world is watching. Will the image of Sean Diddy Combs as a cultural icon be completely destroyed and replaced by that of a convicted felon? Or can his defense team actually tear down the government's case? What we know for sure is that the testimony and evidence have painted a pretty grim picture. The fallout for everyone involved and for the wider entertainment industry will be felt long after the verdict is read. This story is definitely not over, and the courtroom is still the stage for one truly unbelievable saga. Thanks for watching this breakdown of the shocking developments in the Diddy trial. This is an ongoing story, and you can bet we'll bring you updates as they happen. To stay in the loop, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our future coverage. We really appreciate you watching and getting involved in the comments. Until next time.